We are all monsters. Some of us are just better at hiding it. Man speaks of virtue, yet craves power. He condemns evil, yet justifies his own sins. The greatest crimes are not committed by villains, but by those who believe themselves righteous. A man convinced of his own virtue will justify any...
Welcome to the Daily Allegory through Astrological Divination. Today, we're going to touch on the subject of public issues, specifically family court corruption. Now, I have been going through the courts for many years. I have seen many sides. I've dealt with many different judges, many different attorneys. I've crossed paths with many different organizations and people who have been directly affected by different types, different levels of corruption, different unethical behaviors within those systems, I guess I want to say, and just odd, questionable behavior with attorneys on the opposing counsel. Now, I myself have dealt with an interesting observation of a variety of behaviors, and I've always been one to not really feel victimized by things. I'm more of a solutionist. I like to get creative and vocalize and touch on certain things. So whether it hits home or it is viewed as just creative expression, that is to be interpreted by the eye of the beholder, I guess. So going on to my story, our magic motto of the day is when the robe forgets the oath, the ledger becomes the blade. What silence buried, Mars shall inventory. In the province where parchment wore a robe and silence passed for judgment, a man carried a locked ledger to the board of the Commonwealth, not begging for mercy, but inviting the mirror to do what courts had refused: reflect. Behind him trailed the preserved whispers of apt close, the screenshots, the voices, the small digital bones of threats, fraud, alienation, contradiction, and contempt. Before him stood the old machinery, polished in public confidence and rusting in private favors. The clever had mistaken delay for immunity, connection for sanctuary, and ignored evidence for buried evidence. Never understanding the first rule of power: what is hidden is not dead. It is only gathering witnesses. So the petitioner did not shout. He arranged a record like chessmen around a crown already leaning. Naming not vengeance, but review. Not rebellion, but due process. Not rumor, but exhibit. And somewhere beneath the velvet language of impartiality, a darker lesson began to stir. When the scales are touched by unseen hands, every fingerprint becomes prophecy. Every thing leaves a digital footprint or trail. And the same system, once used as a weapon, may become the altar upon which the architects of partiality are quietly weighed. Today's story is called The Robe, the Ledger, and the Knife Behind the Seal. There are courts that weigh evidence, and there are courts that learn to bury it beneath velvet language, polished wood, and the sacred choreography of procedure. In that county, Luzerne County to be exact, the robe did not need to shout to be dangerous. It only had to glance past the proof, pause too long before the truth, and let the silence become a ruling. Every ignored message became another brick in the hidden cathedral. Every screenshot, every voice recording, every video, legally obtained, I might add. Every admission preserved inside the court-approved channel became a candle burning beneath the floorboards, waiting for oxygen. He had been told to speak through the sanctioned app, so he did. He obeyed the order, believed the record would protect him, but the record became something stranger than protection. It became a mirror. Contradictions. Inside it lived threats, contradictions, confessions, alienation disguised as parenting, fraud dressed as survival, and the soft rot of people who believed a courtroom could be used like a private weapon. The opposing party wrote as though the walls belonged to her. She spoke of family connections, favors, friendships, old debts owed in quiet rooms. She seemed to believe power was inherited, not examined. She forgot that every empire built on favors eventually becomes evidence. The judge, in her eyes, did not merely miss the smoke. She sat while the smoke thickened. The protective order existed, yet the protection felt ornamental. The act preserved communications, yet the communications seemed to fall into a ceremonial grave. He brought allegations of financial misconduct, stolen identity, fraudulent claims, mail theft, physical assault in front of the children, parental alienation, false reports, and the slow psychological corrosion that happens when children are turned into messengers inside a war they never chose. Still, the machine moved with a curious blindness, precise in form and vacant in substance. That was the first rule of the house. Never kill due process loudly. Let it die for neglect. But the second rule belonged to the man. He began arranging the record like a strategist arranging knives on a table, not for violence, but for revelation. App-closed messages, screenshots, exported files, voice notes, videos, dockets, prior filings, police reports, admissions, contradictions, statements that cut against sworn testimony. That's called perjury. And when a lawyer knows about this, it's a violation of the bar itself, I might add. An ethics violation. Records showing the shape of a pattern that no single hearing had been willing to name. He understood the Judicial Conduct Board was not an appellate court. He understood it would not reverse a ruling simply because he hated the outcome. So he did not ask them to save him from a result. He asked them to examine the machinery that produced it. Above the courthouse, Mars moved through Aries like a blade remembering its origin. An action is taken when Mars moves through Aries. It's quite literally its natural house. Aries and Mars, they're kindred. Mars square cents in a degree, Jupiter in the 6th house turned the daily machinery of service, duty, paperwork, labor, procedure, and institutional habit into a battlefield of excess. Every routine act became magnified. Every small omission became a doctrine. Every failure to enforce became not merely negligence, but ritual permission. Mars trine Lilith in the 12th pulled the hidden thing from the locked room, the exiled truth, the shadow witness, the buried screen behind respectable faces. And then came the Aries stellium. Neptune, Saturn, Mars, and Chiron gathered like 4 masked witnesses at the back of the courtroom. Neptune revealed illusion. Saturn demanded accountability. Mars brought conflict to the threshold. And Chiron exposed the wound everyone hoped procedure would cauterize without ever treating. In Aries, all of them spoke the same language. Initiation by fire. Luzerne County had mistaken his exhaustion for defeat. They had mistaken his politeness for ignorance. They had mistaken his repeated attempts to be heard for weakness. That was their error, not his problem. A man denied audience learns to become an archive. A man dismissed by the room learns to become the room's memory. A man watched by systems eventually learns where the systems don't even watch themselves, especially when he's no longer the only victim. Somebody's got to stand up to these people and speak up to them. Not everybody can take lead, right? And some people don't give a shit who you're connected to, who you know, how much money you have. Justice prevails always. No slow does remain constant, so says the laws of Mayats. And that's a 5,000-year-old doctrine. So, bigger and better have fallen. Greater empires have taken greater wealth and greater connections internationally and still plummeted to zero. The opposing party believed a court could be used as a corridor with only one exit. File the report, bend the story, request the private hearing, cloak the contradiction, turn the children's voices into arrows, turn protection into a performance. What a waste of connections and an abuse of power. turn fraud into fog, turn connections into armor, but armor built from favors always has a flaw. It shines way too brightly under investigation. He wrote to the board not as a beggar, but as a cartographer of rot. He did not say, "Believe me." He said, "Review the record." He did not say, "Punish them because I suffer." He said, "Measure whether the oath survived contact with the evidence of the subject matter." Subject matter, material evidence to the subject matter is going to be an important phrase there. Because it's no longer a state issue. It's federal and it's felony level issues. At this gravity, I would say. He did not say the court ruled against me. He said the court may have allowed one party to turn process into a weapon while denying the other the meaningful right to be heard. That is due process. That is an inherent right of an American citizen. That is a natural order of the United States that is constitutionally protected. But let's just skip entire processes because we don't care, because we think we are holier than thou, right? That distinction there matters. It was the thin wire between complaint and strategy. The Machiavellian does not scream at the castle gate. No. And I've studied both sides of the spectrum. He inventories the stones. He names the architect. He marks the tunnels. Then he sends the map to the one institution that cannot pretend the castle is merely decorative. By the time the evidence was assembled, the story no longer belonged to rumor. It had become a ledger. Every entry had a date. Every admission had a source. Every contradiction had a twin. Every ignored risk to the children stood like a small ghost in the margin. The courthouse could dismiss a man. It could not so easily dismiss a pattern. Especially when he's not the only victim. I mean, how many of us have gone through similar, not quite scale, but similar issues? With the same courthouse, with the same county, with the same group of people? How many kids go missing? How many families are affected? How many people do they target? Get punished for reporting it? Try harder. Like a progressive guy. You gotta be quicker than that. And somewhere inside the sealed machinery of review, the Robe would face the question no Robe wants to answer. Was justice blind because it was noble? Or because it had chosen not to look? That was the terror beneath the title. Not that one man had been wrong, because it's just many of us now. Not that one woman had allegedly lied. Not even that a protective order may have become theater. The terror was this: a system can survive an error. It can survive a harsh ruling. It can survive a disappointed litigant. But it cannot forever survive the discovery that its silence had a preference. You know, while we're being non-biased, impartial. So the man sent the record forward, and the courthouse became what all careless kingdoms eventually become. Not a fortress, not a sanctuary, not even a throne. A crime scene made of paper with a trail too long to ignore. And under the red signature of Mars and Aries, the message sharpened itself into a final, cryptic warning. When the Robe forgets the oath, the ledger remembers. When the court buries the evidence, the archive now then becomes the judge. And when power protects the wrong illusion for way too long, justice does not arrive as mercy. It arrives as inventory. And it does collect. We're going to end this with the invocation of the ledger beneath the robe. But a witness to the sealed record, but a voice preserved in the machine. By every message, image, admission, and shadowed confession, let the buried thing rise without distortion. I call not for vengeance, but for revelation. I call not for ruin, but for the correction of a very, very serious imbalance. Let every falsehood lose its borrowed face. Let every hidden favor be dragged from the velvet room. Let every oath remember the weight it swore to carry. Let every robe that turned away from truth feel the stare of the archive. By Mars and Aries, sharpen the courage to confront. By Mars square Jupiter in the sixth, expose the excess hidden inside routine procedure. By Mars trine Lilith in the 12th, Let the concealed witness speak from behind the veil. By Neptune dissolve illusion, by Saturn restore consequence, by Chiron reveal the wound that was minimalized. By the fire of Aries, let cowardice burn away from the path of justice. May the children be shielded from manipulation. May the record be preserved from tampering. May the innocent be protected from systems used as weapons. May the truth arrive with clean hands, clear eyes, and an iron spine. If evidence was ignored, let it return louder. If due process was denied, let the denial become visible. If power was abused, let power answer to the law above it. If protection became performance, let the performance end. I place this matter before the higher court of truth, where no connection can purchase silence, no title can bury consequence, no lie can survive its own echo, and no shadow can outrun the dawn. Let the ledger open, let the robe be measured, let the oath be remembered, let the hidden pattern reveal itself in full. And so the invocation is sealed. What was concealed shall be catalogued, what was dismissed shall be examined, what was weaponized shall be disarmed, what was broken shall answer to balance, and what was done in darkness shall stand before the fire of the record. With the spiritual authority I contain, we seal this decree whispered by the Emperor, and so it is. That's all I have for you guys. Hopefully we're out here making good decisions and not putting our career, public image, families, and entirety in jeopardy for a back-end deal or favor that wasn't worth it. I mean, what are you protecting, really?